Okay, it should be working. Wait till the bar completes until I. Okay, and I will make Charlotte. Do you want me to make you host or David? Back to you.
Yeah, make Joyce back to host at Zoom 1 because we still need to do the closed captioning.
Too late. All right, so Charlotte, you're
Charlotte
tag.
Tag, Charlotte make Zoom 1. Yeah.
So do you want? It won't let me switch back host.
My camera's not. Oh, my camera's not plugged in.
You can assign host back to Zoom 1.
The only option I have is to rename.
If you hover over Zoom 1, can you do it?
Yep, I see what she's saying. Yes,
oh, there we go.
Yep. Yeah, you don't hover over yourself, you hover over the one you want to do it to. Thanks. All right, and what we're going to do now is we're going to make her.
But I need, yeah, I need to be a co-host again.
Yep.
Yes, and me too, please.
Yep, absolutely.
I totally forgot about that. See, oh my God, I can't be doing this.
No, you can get, we'll get it. That's why we have a half an hour before each meeting to make sure we do all the steps. All right, so now we're just waiting on the captioner.
So my question to you, D-Mac, is
Okay, finally got the image on YouTube. Bless you.
Thank you.
Oh, loud.
this is what is it?
Treasurer Kelly?
Treasurer Kelly, is that the interpreter?
No, she's a member. You can let her in.
I mean, caption, I'm sorry.
Okay.
She's in.
Okay. All right, so we go back to mute.
Good morning, Amy, Bev, and Tresserlin. We're just waiting for the captioner to join us, and then we'll get started shortly. I believe the captioner is in. Tara, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Someone can just make the captioner, that'd be great.
Okay, I just made the caption co-host. I'm going to assign.
Oh, yeah. And I go over here to her.
Hold on.
Wherever she is, captioner here. There. Sign closed caption.
Mm-hmm. Let me make sure it's there.
Yep, you'll see the move. You
Yep.
see the CC?
Gotcha.
All right, captioner, you are now assigned if you want to use your token the way you need to and test out the captioning for us. And the last thing I do here, Joyce, is this.
Oh yeah. That's the one.
Do it right here. And I go show subtitle.
There we go.
We can see your captions on our side. Excellent. That is fantastic.
She
All
said,
right.
okay, great.
So now we are going to return the host capabilities. You can do it to Charlotte.
To Charlotte.
Tara,
Can you
this
hear
is Charlotte. I'm going to host the meeting. And I just want to let you know, I'm going to pivot slightly from some of the notes that I sent you regarding the presentation of the bylaws changes. And I think we're instead going to go through them using the track changes document. But I'll try to speak slower so it won't be too hard for you.
Okay, that's great. As long as I can see like your whatever PowerPoint you're presenting, that's great.
Okay.
Problem.
And Charlotte, if you could make Zoom one back to co-host, I think we're done. And on the next one that you and I and everybody does, I think we're going to let you as host assign to Betsy and also assign the closed caption. We're going to teach you guys how to do that too. So you guys have that skill as well.
Okay.
But not for this one.
Elizabeth, I think you can merge the phone number to starts with 276 with Amy Duncan.
Who am I merging it with?
Amy Duncan.
I don't see that option.
I can do it, I think. Oh, maybe we'll just leave it as is. Amy, can you hear us? I think you can hear us, but I'm just confirming I still can't hear you. Just a heads up.
I'm trying to call in on my phone.
Oh, okay. I got
Is that working?
Okay. We'll just wait until one more minute and then we'll get started in case there is somebody waiting to watch this on the stream. Or is the stream live?
Yeah, we're live. Everything's good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just go ahead and get started because everybody's here. All right. Welcome to today's Commonwealth Council on Aging Bylaws Committee meeting. Due to the active state of emergency, this is an electronic meeting pursuant to item 4-0.01 of the 2020 Appropriation Act. Meeting notice has been provided. The meeting is being recorded and minutes are being taken. All votes will be conducted via a roll call of voting members. Meeting materials are posted under the Council on Aging's Bylaws meeting tab at the link posted on the slide. Members of the public are able to live stream this meeting via the DAR's YouTube page. Please be advised that if the live stream is interrupted, we will need to pause the meeting until it is restored. Public comment will be accepted by email or phone to my attention. Public comments that were received by August 26th will be read, or if lengthy, summarized during the meeting when we reach that agenda item. Working through the Zoom functions, members, please keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking. This helps to reduce background noise. Also, before you speak, please state your name. Not only does this help your colleagues on the committee know who's talking, but it also helps Cecily with documenting the minutes. This is particularly important as committee members will be discussing recommendations and our captioner will be trying to caption the discussion. Members, if you have your video enabled, please be aware the system may capture your image and the video in the public streaming and recording. You can use the chat feature as well. This is being monitored by my coworker, Elizabeth. You can also use reactions to do a thumbs up for agreement or clap to raise your hand to speak. If you would like to view the real-time captioning of today's meeting, please click on the CC button on the menu bar at the bottom and select Show Subtitles. Zoom participants will have to turn on closed captioning, the YouTube streaming will automatically include the captioning. To view options in this area, you can set yourself some or some features will be set by the host. Again, for all votes, we'll do a roll call and you'll be asked to indicate support, yay or yes, opposition, nay or no, or abstain. Lastly, I would like to thank the DARS video teleconferencing team and the DARS communication team for making this electronic meeting possible. And now I'll turn it over to Beverly Sobel.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting today. We've pulled the committee together in response to a motion that was made at the August 11th Commonwealth Council on Aging meeting. The committee's task is to review the bylaws and recommend revisions to the full Council on Aging committee members, which includes us, me, Amy Duncan, and Tressie Kelly. So I'd like to ask everyone to please introduce themselves. I am the chairman of the committee, and again, welcome everybody. Amy?
Hello, I'm Amy Duncan, and I think I'm echoing, but I'm having to call in from my phone. I am the 9th Congressional District.
I think Amy needs to turn off the sound on her computer.
Hi, Amy,
Uh-huh.
you might need to mute your computer.
Okay.
Because I think the signal's
Charlotte,
up.
she's joined by both phone, I think, and computer. And so if she can't get that resolved, she could just hang up the phone and unmute her computer mic.
I think she was having a hard time getting the microphone on her computer.
I got you. All right, I'm gonna hop back off for a sec.
Bev, let's go to Tresserland and see if Amy can work that out in the meantime.
Okay, Trestle, we were just gonna, I was just gonna ask everybody to get the meeting started. Do you want to wait, Charlotte, or do you want to move on?
Well, I think we still need to do a finish introductions.
Okay, I think we still need to wait for Trestle.
No,
She's
I'm here.
not.
Good morning.
Oh, you're here. Okay, Amy, are we waiting for Amy before we get started?
Well, let's have Tresserland introduce herself.
Please,
And
Trestle.
Good morning. I'm Trestle Kelly with the 3rd Congressional District down in Hampton Roads.
Thank you. Amy, do you want to try again? So we're not able to hear you. She's going to use the chat. Okay. All right. So Elizabeth, if you'll help me keep an eye on the chat for Amy, I think just because of the sound issues.
Okay, so can you do an intro by chat?
I think she's working on that right.
Oh, you're working on it. Okay. Well, we can see you. Welcome to the world of technology, right? So she hasn't activated the sound. I see that she's muted.
Yeah, she's having some issues with the microphone. So she's, I think, typing into the chat her introduction and then staff will read it on her behalf.
Thank you.
Oh, maybe she's trying to. Amy, did you just join with an iPhone? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Let's see.
She'll need to turn her speakers down on her computer so that it doesn't feedback also.
I
and
went
then she
ahead
can
and
talk on the
turned-
phone.
Oh, I think she exited that one out.
I went ahead and turned that one off.
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys. I thought I had
okay.
it all fixed before the meeting. But anyway, I'm Amy Duncan. I represent the 9th Congressional District on this committee, and I look forward to being on this bylaw committee. And I'm glad to see everyone. It's so good to see everyone's faces.
Thank you. Welcome again. So without any further discussion, let's get the meeting started. So at this time, Charlotte, we need to review the proposed agenda.
Yes. Does anybody have anything to add to the agenda, or is there a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Amy, and I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
This is Tressel, and I second the motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Charlotte, could you go ahead and conduct the roll call for the vote?
Yes. Beverly Sobel,
Yes? Yay?
Amy Duncan,
Yay.
Tresserlin Kelly.
Yay.
The agenda is adopted.
So
At this
go ahead.
Okay. At this time, we now need to, oh, I have the wrong slide for it should be bylaws committee chair. We now need to conduct an election for a bylaws committee chair. I would like to open the nominations from the floor. Any member can bring forth a nomination. The nomination can be for himself or herself or another person. The nominee must consent to the nomination. Are there any nominations?
So would either of you agree to chair this committee?
This is Tresselin. Beverly, I think you're doing an amazing job. And with that, I believe that you should continue on as our chair of the bylaws committee.
All right.
And I will second that motion.
So it appears there are no other nominations. So is there a consent to go ahead and close the nominations? Okay,
Yes.
thank
This is Tresselin Kelly. I consent to close the nominations.
Okay, so we'll have a roll call. A majority of those present will constitute the election of the office. So let's go ahead and take the vote. Charlotte?
Yes, this is a vote to confirm Beverly as the bylaws committee chair. Beverly Sobel,
Yay.
Amy Duncan,
Yay.
Tresserlin Kelly.
Yay.
Beverly is the chair of the bylaws committee.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Charlotte, for moving the meeting forward.
Public comment for this meeting was accepted by email or phone. Public comments received by August 26th will be read or if lengthy summarized during the meeting. I can confirm that there were no public comments received.
Okay, with that, I think that we move forward with the discussion of the bylaws revision.
Okay. I'm gonna pull up the track changes document and share that slide. So give me 1 second. Members, you have been provided handouts for today's meeting. Besides the agenda, these handouts include the council's current bylaws adopted in December 2015, track changes with potential bylaws revisions, and the summary of the potential bylaw revisions. For planning, the hope is that the committee could develop and share recommendations that are discussed today at the council's upcoming September 16th meeting. The September 16th meeting agenda will include time for the council members to discuss the bylaws and provide feedback on the recommended changes. Then, in accordance with the bylaws, the council should be able to adopt any revisions at the subsequent council meeting to be held either in December or January. For the purposes of our meeting today, I would like to guide members through the changes. In the interest of time, I will be skipping over technical cleanup items and instead focus on the items covered in the remaining 3 categories of changes. If you have questions or would like to discuss an item as we get to it, please let me know or speak up or type in the chat. So what you have in front of you are the track changes bylaws. Ignore the formatting issues if you on like the side, and then if you see anything in terms of indentations or numbering, we'll get that cleaned up on the back end. One of the first changes made is in Article 1, Section 2, where the council duties have been updated to reflect the revised Section 51.5-28 of the Code of Virginia. In Section 3, the responsibilities were, and these are staff, let me clarify, these are staff suggestions. You can accept any of these, reject them, or change them. And at the end of the meeting, you'll hopefully have consensus on the recommended changes you want to put forward. So at any point, if we get through this and you want to discuss an item or you have a question, let me know so we can play with it right now. In Section 3, there's language added to clarify when certain actions need the full approval of the council. I've also added the responsibility of participating in the Virginia State Plan for Aging Services listening sessions.
Excuse me, Charlotte,
And-
could I just ask a question? Is this the appropriate time if I had a question about the version that eliminates develop the legislation, which is under A?
Yes.
Okay, I see that,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, is this the appropriate time to ask if we should, while we're eliminating the development, and a suggestion that I have to continue to include that?
Yes. I initially struck developed thinking that initiate or support covered that, but I understand that maybe initiate might be a different type of verb than develop. So would you like to add develop back in?
Yes, I would like to suggest
Okay.
reinstating that. I don't know if the other members of the committee concur with that.
This is Amy, and I think that would be fine as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Continuing on, I've also updated the language around the annual report requirement to hopefully clarify the process and what's included. So it says that annual report shall outline the accomplishments of the council for the previous state fiscal year and any legislative proposals or positions for the upcoming calendar year. The annual report shall be prepared in collaboration with the council's legislative committee, council chair, and the department, and approved by the council. I'm thinking now that I'm looking at this, that the in collaboration with the department might sound too strong. In the sense that what I intended is that the staff help develop it, not that necessarily we influence the content. Does anybody have thoughts on that phrasing?
This is Tresselin. I think if you add a statement in regard to staff helps in the development, that would be more appropriate
Okay.
than the use of collaboration.
I'll highlight changes as we go, and then I can work back and finesse the language for some areas if that's acceptable to people.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Lastly, I did strike G because it's not in line with the scope of the council, which is intended to make recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly, not congressional delegation members. I also don't think that this has been done in practice for some time, this activity. For Article 2, membership and staff support, there's just some minor tweaks into A and then B. I did add a section C about member resignations. This is added to clarify member responsibilities in this area. And it is a common provision found in the bylaws of other DARS advisory boards. I also added a new subsection about how one member of the council is appointed and serves on the Public Guardian and Conservator Advisory Board as required in the code. With regard to section 2 on absences, I did add 2 provisions about expectations to attend regularly scheduled meetings, and that members shall confirm attendance or absence as requested. Let's see. Also did add language in C, changing a shall to a may. Regarding if a member misses 2 or more consecutive meetings. I thought that the shall might not be entirely necessary if there's a reasonable understanding of why a member might have missed a meeting or 2 consecutive meetings. And that the executive committee did not necessarily need to always review those, which would require a meeting. Elizabeth, are we still getting subtitles?
I don't see any right now.
Oh, there we are. Okay. With regard to terms of office, I just did some clarifying language or technical changes. A new section 4 has been added to further expand on member requirements regarding completing a financial disclosure statement, the training that's required, that members serve without compensation. However, We can reimburse members for reasonable and necessary expenses to attend meetings. These provisions are comparable to what's included in other advisory board bylaws within the department as well. I also added a section 5 regarding staff support. Again, this is comparable to what's included in other advisory board bylaws. And it, specifically identifies what my requirement is, as well as Cecily and others, in regards to supporting the council. Any questions or comments on Article 2 before we move on?
Charlotte, I did notice and mention that under staff support B, there's just a typo there.
Okay.
Yeah. Offer newly appointed members of council a new member orientation. It just had an extra word in there.
Okay, thank you. Hearing nothing else, we'll move on to Article 3, officers. In section 2, I did add a clause regarding the chair serving until successors are elected or confirmed. This would be more in accordance with language for Robert's Rules of Order. I also added some additional detail in subsection B about if a chair or a vice is unable to complete their term and how that's handled. And so a special election shall be held at the next meeting to elect a new vice chair once the vice chair assumes the role of the chair. And then it adds another detail about if a vice chair or secretary are unable to complete their terms. A special election shall be held to elect a new vice chair or to confirm a new secretary. Regarding section 3, the conduct of elections, added language clarifying when elections occur, how the nominating committee is decided, and the language clarifying how an election shall be conducted with a voice vote or a roll call.
Charlotte, could I ask a question at this point?
Yes.
And that is for, please clarify what election year references. And I don't know if either of you other two have questions about it, but I did. What the election year references.
This is Amy, and I'm unsure of that as well.
Okay. I'll just highlight this. We'll add some clarifying language there.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Moving on to duties of officers, did tweak this language to reflect current practices and also some areas of confusion. So I added that the chair will help consult with the department to develop meeting agendas, and that the chair is a non-voting ex officio member of all standing committees. However, the chair may be a voting member of the nominating committee and any special committees. The current bylaws are unclear about if the chair is a voting member or a non-voting member, and it's created confusion in some of the committee meetings. Does anybody want to talk about that? Because it could be that the chair is a voting member or a non-voting member. The committee can or the council can decide. My sense was that the intent was the chair as a non-voting member because the standing committees have odd number memberships, either 5 members or 7 members, which I felt, is usually intended to be able to break a tie if there is one. So if you added the ex officio chair as a voting member, that would open up the possibility for votes to be tied more frequently?
This is Beverly, I expect that this may create some discussion at the meeting. So if we could agree what our recommendation is as a committee, I think it might help facilitate the discussion because we have so much to cover at every meeting. Oh, for goodness sakes. Another spam call.
Tresserlin or Amy, do you have any thoughts on this item?
I do. Would it be possible to put some wording in there? Because I agree with you that if it was, what did you say, special committee, they have odd number of members. So that would cover a tie. But could there be some language that may state in the event of a tie on a committee, the chair will act as that additional vote to break the tie?
That's an idea.
I agree with that. If we could put something in there in regards to, you know, the tie, a tiebreaker.
And this is Trestlin again. I think that would help in covering all of our bases.
Okay.
It would spell it out a little bit more.
Okay. We'll leave that there. Anything else? Sorry, before I move on, anything else on the chair? Okay. The changes to the vice chair and the secretary were minor, except for the secretary currently has that the secretary shall review and sign the official minutes. And, you know, in 2020, due to technology advances and also due to the pandemic, you know, it doesn't really seem to make sense that the secretary has to sign the minutes. I think, you know, staff work to document and email correspondence, the secretary's approval of the minutes, and my sense is that should be sufficient. Is that, anybody have any discussion on that?
Charlotte, this is Amy, and I agree with that. I don't feel that there's a need for a signature.
Charlotte, I think that is fine. And if you get a chance, could you go back up to the vice chair? I just wanted to peruse that section a little bit.
Okay.
So I guess the only thing I have about that, in the chair section, the chair is the only person that can officially represent the council. So in section 2, when we get to the vice chair, it just says shall perform such other duties as may be requested by the chair. But in the event the chair cannot request that the vice chair acts as that official person in that capacity, we don't have any language to state that the vice chair would assume that, or is that just understood? Because we talk about them assuming the responsibility of the council meetings, but not acting as the official spokesman for the council. Did that make sense?
So if the chair is unable to ask that the vice chair perform a duty, that there's a concern there.
Correct.
Okay. Would you like to be able, or would that be conferred automatically, or would it have to be like at the request of the executive committee or the full council?
I think maybe staff.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that would just help to kind of clarify it
Okay.
for me anyway. I'm open to hearing other suggestions and thoughts.
President, this is Amy. I agree with you on that. Because I would think it would be a given, but other members of the council may not think that, have that same thought.
Okay. I'll finesse that language.
Thank you.
Anything else for this article? Okay. Article 4 deals with committees. There are a lot of changes in this section. So first, with regards to the executive committee, I added some language here about, and it says 2 at-large members shall serve a 2-year term and may succeed themselves once, provided that such succession is consistent with the terms of appointment to the council. At this time, the chair has always had the authority to appoint members to the committee. And then in the executive committee, the chair recommends members and then they're elected by the full council, but it never was very clear if those have terms or if once those 2 members are elected, do they serve in perpetuity? So this kind of sought to provide some more parameters around that. It also, the executive committee has always had the authority to exercise powers of the full council between meetings. Wanted to add here that they may also approve a grant or other funding proposal on behalf of the council when the timeline for such grant or proposal does not align with the council meeting schedule. The thought here was that sometimes an opportunity in the future, an opportunity might present itself and it's not feasible for the council to meet to approve a grant proposal, but that the executive committee could do that on behalf of the council.
I agree with that. This is Trestlin. I apologize, I didn't state my name.
Then I added a provision in D. So the chair has always had the authority to schedule an executive committee. I also added the option that if 3 members of the executive committee in coordination can also call for a meeting of the executive committee.
Charlotte, could you expand on in coordination?
I think it would be, well, and maybe we can finesse this, that the staff would have to get the request from 3 members. Now, if, I guess in this, in how this would play out is if one executive committee member requested an executive committee meeting, staff would reach out to the remaining executive committee members, share that request, and attempt, or not attempt necessarily, but remind people that if 2 others also requested that an executive meeting committee could be called. In coordination might not need to be there.
Well, no, I think we do need some parameter, because I recall, I think, that there was a request by a member for an executive committee, and there was no response to that. So I want to prevent any other future issue with regard of someone requesting an executive committee meeting, and how we're supposed to respond on that. So maybe it could be fleshed out a little bit.
Okay.
I don't even know how, but I'm just saying, I just want to eliminate a lot of discussion over, something that could be simply taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I can finesse this one a little bit to clear, make sure it's clear. Okay, moving into the standing committees. This reiterates that there are 3 standing committees, and that in B, that committee members shall be appointed by the chair and subject to confirmation by a majority of council members present at the meeting held during the 4th quarter of the state fiscal year ending June 30th. This was intended to allow committee memberships to be decided by June 30th for the upcoming state fiscal year. And so that there would be, clear committee membership for that July 1 to the next June 30th year. And that new members who are appointed to the council in those intervening years, or if current or intervening months, or current council members who are interested, that they can be appointed by the chair to a vacant committee slot outside of that period of outside of that one meeting, where the committees are generally decided in a block. Right now, the chair does have the authority to appoint members to all of these standing committees. So this is a little bit more inclusive of the council in that process, and it kind of frames out when those appointments are made and the confirmations are done. Does anybody have thoughts on this? This will be slightly different than the process now. Okay. Hearing no objections to that, we'll keep moving. So here, with regard to the legislative committee, I did strike that language about the chair appointing the members, because like I said, we just covered that for all standing committees in the subsection prior. I also added to each of the standing committees language about how to elect a committee chair, and that the committee chairs serve a 1-year term. What the chair's responsibilities are for a standing committee, which include presiding over the meetings, consulting with staff on the agendas and meeting materials, and approving minutes, because the committees don't have secretaries themselves. I also tweaked here in the legislative committee language about the committee is responsible for following legislation and recommending positions for advocacy to the council, for the executive committee or the council to present to the, and instead of saying administration, I said the governor, the department, and the legislature, because administration wasn't really a clear term with regard to who that was intended for.
Charlotte, this is Tresselyn. I just had a question. In the previous section, for the committees, the standing committees, it didn't state that a staff member shall be a part or kind of,
Support.
yes. I don't recall, I don't remember, and it may have been there, but I'm just thinking that staff should be able to, you know, be a support part of all of the committees, the standing committees. Because they may have more information on a topic that committee members may not be aware of that could aid and assist.
Okay. Okay, that's good. I've put that there. We'll finesse that too. Moving towards the Planning and Development Committee. This one has 7 members, and I've included the same language here as the Legislative Committee, except to say that the during an annual meeting of the Planning and Development Committee or during the first meeting of the Planning and Development Committee in a period of 2 years, the Planning and Development Committee shall elect a committee chair to serve for a 1-year term. The Legislative Committee and the Best Practices Committee have a more standard schedule for meetings, making it, you know, more consistent with electing a new chair each year. The Planning and Development Committee doesn't have a set schedule, so I wanted to allow for time that either if they met, you know, started to meet annually, or if there had been a time lapse that whenever they brought a new, whenever they brought the committee together after a significant period of time, that the chair would be elected at that point as well.
And Charlotte, can you just add the staff piece to that section?
I think I'm going to add it in the beginning of the section to apply to all the committees.
Perfect.
The other thing that I changed with the Planning and Development Committee is currently they have a goal of having a session, a listening session in every congressional district every 4 years. So there are 11 congressional districts, and it just didn't seem viable to have 11 listening sessions. And then historically, when these have been done, they have been more regional with, I think, 5 listening sessions. So I changed that to allow for regional sessions. And then I struck the every 4 years because I wanted it to align with the department's state plan for aging services, which is generally every 4 years. But in the Older Americans Act, it has the option for states to do a state plan every 2, 3, or 4 years. So this would just allow the committee to follow the schedule that the department sets for the state plan and be flexible if that should ever change from 4 years to 2 or 3. I also added language in the Planning and Development Committee regarding grants. And it says that proposals shall be submitted to the full council for approval, notwithstanding the provision earlier in the bylaws that the executive committee can approve a grant proposal when it's not feasible to have a full council meeting.
This is Beverly. I think that is a good addition, because in assuming that the VGEC had the potential for offering grants, there may be a time delay in between when the grant is submitted and whenever it needed to be proposed. So I think this is a welcome change.
Okay. For the best practices committee, I did add language here that the committee may request advice or consultation from outside parties who shall not be deemed members and shall not have voting privileges. My understanding is in the past, sometimes the best practices committee has brought in outside experts to help provide feedback on proposals for best practices awards. And so I just wanted to allow for that more clearly in the bylaws. And then here again, you see the language about the electing a chair for a one-year term and the chair's responsibilities. I've added caregiving to what the best practices committee, the scope of their recognition can be for aging and caregiving. This has been done in practice. Just wanted to make sure it was clear that this would also be permissible scope of program awards. And then lastly, just cleaned up some language because the best practices committee can't actually establish regulations. So that instead what it reads is that they can set up policies and procedures for accomplishing their mission.
Charlotte, this is Beverly. I wanted to step back a minute and ask about the annual meeting of the Best Practices Committee. I had asked if we needed clarifying text on that about an annual meeting.
So this would be, let me see if this helps. The annual meeting to review nominations for the Best Practices Awards. Does that help?
I think it was the annual piece that I was asking about.
Well, typically the Best Practices Committee meets once a year. And so that would be their annual meeting.
Okay, yeah, so long as that's clarified.
Okay. I did strike this language about other standing committees because it seemed odd to me because we have the three set up and then underneath this section we have that the chair of the executive committee may form any special committees. I don't, in the time of the council's existence, I don't believe there have ever been other standing committees besides these three, but I do know there have been ad hoc committees, which would be covered under this section 3 language. And my thought was if another standing committee is created, that should also be added as a standing committee directly into the bylaws in the future. And then this this language here says that it, with the exception of the executive committee, all standing committees and special committees shall submit recommendations to the council for consideration and action as a whole. This is intended to reflect that the committees shouldn't act on items without going through the council first, necessarily. This is not really a change, it's just a tweak in the language. So I just want to reiterate it. Moving on to Article 5. This is about meetings. So here the council shall meet at least 4 times a year or more often if the chair believes it's necessary or a quorum of the council votes accordingly. The language about if the quorum of the council believes it necessary was kind of open-ended into what that would look like. So this suggestion that the council would vote on that, I think more clearly defines how that would happen. And then this also adds provision that's required, that the public comment will be accepted by the council, and that the receipt of written comments will be noted verbally by the chair during public comments may be time limited. We haven't had an issue with that before, but just wanted to put that out there. And these provisions are also found in other advisory board bylaws. For the council and all committees, a majority of the voting membership present constitutes a quorum. The council was always, the language is always there. This just reiterates that the same quorum requirements applies to all committees. And this B is a new language that has come up, which is to say that notwithstanding any other applicable state law, when there isn't a quorum, the present members may continue to hear informational items and minutes are recorded, but they won't take no action can officially be taken. This would be reminiscent of the December 2019 meeting when there wasn't a quorum, but the council still moved forward with the agenda items to the degree that they could. This section 3 just adds something that's already in place, but just reiterates it that the public meetings are all subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. With regard to the minutes, there is a change here. So the council member, I need to change that. That the minutes are approved by the secretary, and then that the secretary presents the minutes to the council. This has always historically been done from what I can tell, and the bylaws weren't consistent with this practice. So this just brings them into alignment. This was one of the main items that prompted the bylaws committee to meet today. Regarding the notice section, notice shall be done at least 7 days before the meeting, and that minutes and other materials may be emailed to those members, and that should be done at least 7 days before the meeting as well, unless there is good cause otherwise. This is kind of a department practice so that members have time to prepare for the meetings. I think this is a particularly important requirement during electronic meetings, which have been shortened in length than your usual in-person meetings. And it helps to make sure everybody's reviewed things before a meeting so you can continue to move quickly through your agenda. The unless good cause otherwise is an example would be if the council is meeting, let's say on a Wednesday, but the governor's budget isn't available until the Monday, 2 days prior, that obviously the council would want some information and analysis about that, but it would have been impossible to get it to the council with 7 days in advance. This section 5.5 regarding electronic participation, it is out of step with the Freedom of Information Act, which has been amended several times over the years. And what we as a department have suggested to all our advisory boards is that they have a separate electronic meeting and participation policy that's outside of the bylaws. Because in that instance, it can be more readily updated when FOIA laws change, whereas the bylaws process tends to take a longer time, and you don't want to be, in violation of a law just because your bylaws process is not quick enough. The electronic policy is pretty standard. It's set. The requirements are pretty much set by FOIA. I will be sure to send this out to the committee to review, but it is something that we would be wanting to share with the council also on September 16th. And that is to say this electronic meeting policy would obviously apply in normal situation when you all are meeting in person. Given the state of emergency, some of those requirements have shifted, because it's just not safe to meet in person. So. And then this last article sets up a process for how to amend the bylaws. So different advisory boards at DARS have different processes. Some require, like yours does now, for the changes to be presented at one meeting and then discussed at a second meeting. And then some advisory boards have the requirement that as long as the changes are sent out with a sufficient enough time in advance of a meeting, that the changes can be presented and voted on the same day. My thought was that since the council only meets 4 times a year, that the latter option of being able to present changes and vote on them within one meeting would probably be a more viable option for the council, rather than spending 2 of your 4 meetings dealing with bylaws changes each time you have to do it. But I'm welcome to suggestions. If people feel like that's a little bit too aggressive, we can certainly go back to the current process with the 2 meeting requirement. I did add here that the bylaws take effect immediately upon adoption. Just to clarify, sometimes it's presumed that they take effect once the meeting has adjourned or at the start of the next meeting. This just clarifies that they take effect once they're adopted. And then this 2/3 majority vote here is just to be consistent with what's required in the 2/3 vote here, right above it. And then this December 9th will change depending on if the meeting date moves to January. So those are the changes. I don't think I've missed any that have been suggested. Does anybody have any questions or want to talk further about these?
Charlotte, this is Beverly. I just had a question going back, and I'm sorry to go back. On page 9, where we talk about in section 3 and section 4, where we talk about committees, special committees, and committee and task group reporting. I thought we eliminated task groups, so would that title be?
Yes, good catch.
I apologize for not catching that so quickly.
Thank you for that. While you all are thinking about if you want to talk about anything else, let me also just walk through what I'm thinking for the September 16th meeting. I'll work with Beverly as the chair to come up with some language for how to present these changes. My thought was to provide the track changes and the summary handout to members, but not necessarily the current bylaws untouched for two reasons. One, most members should already have those in their material, in their council new orientation binder, or once they were adopted in 2015. But also I didn't want to overwhelm people with handouts. The track changes version will give them a sense of what's in the current bylaws just based on how the track changes is presented. Was the summary handout helpful to people? Did that feel, did you look at that at all? Or is it overwhelming, or is there any other material you think that would be helpful for the full council to have for that September 16th meeting? Is kind of the question I'm asking.
Charlotte, this is Amy, and I thought that it was perfect and it really helped me a lot.
Okay.
Charlotte, I think just having the track changes bylaw and the summary would be more than enough. I agree that giving additional information may be a little overwhelming.
Okay.
For me personally, this is Beverly. For me personally, it was easier to follow proposed changes using the tracking, say, paper. So will our comments that we're making today be included in what is going to be distributed to the membership?
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways to do this. And one, if I as staff could offer a preference, I would. What I would need from you all today is to make a motion and adopt the recommended changes to the council. And so what you could do is have a motion that adopts the changes as presented to you, with the understanding that the items discussed that need to be tweaked will be done by staff. And then that the result will be presented in September. That would be my preference. The other option is if you would like to still see these changes before they go to the full council and to make and adopt them, again, we would have to meet again to do that. So it's just a matter of what your comfort level is, and we can do it either way. Just a second meeting does require, some staff coordination to do.
This is Tresselyn. I make a motion that we accept the proposed changes for the bylaws be presented to the full council and during our September meeting with the track changes that were conducted in the August meeting of the bylaw committee.
There a second?
This is Amy, and I will second that motion.
So Charlotte, can we conduct the roll?
Yes, so this is a roll call vote for the bylaws committee to adopt the track changes to the bylaws as recommendations for the council, including the revisions discussed during today's meeting. Beverly Sobel,
Yay.
Amy Duncan,
Yes.
Tresserlyn Kelly,
Yay.
The motion is adopted unanimously.
Well, thank you for the deliberation and your work on this, and particularly to Charlotte for taking care of all of this so that we were able to go through the proposed changes. So unless there are any other additional items on the agenda, I can now adjourn the meeting, and the chair will work with staff, Charlotte, to prepare the recommendations for the bylaw revision for consideration for our full meeting on September 16th. And I thank you all for your time and for the energy that you put into this. I know it is a huge task, and I appreciate your involvement and that of Charlotte to make this possible. So I will now adjourn the meeting. A motion is not needed. And thank you again.
Thank you.
And
Have a good-
thanks, Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you all.
Everything was very smooth and well presented.
Yes, and thank you for asking me to be a part of it. I enjoyed the opportunity.
I did as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. I'm going to be exiting out the Zoom.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.